A young girl named Tessa is walking in a forest. She tells us her life before him was so simple. Tessa is then seen laying in her room. She packs her stuff, gives a last look at her room and heads downstairs. The mom makes sure she has everything, but Tessa reminds her she is going to college, not in a survival camp. And now it's time for Tessa to head to college. Her brother drives her to the campus. They arrive as she is so excited. They then head to her room. Inside they find two other girls. It's a little awkward, but they introduce each other. They are Molly and Tristan. They tell her they can get her into any clubs with no id. The mom hears it and leaves. Tessa chases her and she tells her daughter they are going to complain to the housing office. Tessa begs her not to make a scene. She asks her to trust her daughter. Minutes later, they then say goodbye to each other. It's emotional, but it's time to let the adult Tessa take the next step in her life. She then goes back to the room. Molly wonders how much she freaked her mom out. Tessa says her mom is very protective. She finds her brother cute. Tessa then corrects her saying, it's her boyfriend, Noah. That night arrives. Her mom texts her, as well as Noah, checking on her. The morning arrives. The happy Tessa goes out for her first class. She meets another student and realizes the door is locked. The teacher comes to open and compliment them in being super early. The other student is Landon. That night, Tessa is having her first night at college. She takes a nice shower and go back inside her room. There she sees a boy. She panics and tells him he is in the wrong room. He tells her he is in the right room. His name is Scott. Molly then comes into the bed. He is her friend. Molly comes to her face and tells her she is going out with them tonight. She hesitates. Scott doubts that girl can even party. The next day, Tessa is at the cafeteria when Scott and his friends enter. She tries to ignore him. He notices her looking. He gives her that gorgeous look as she can't stop staring at him. Minutes later, Tessa goes to the library instead. There Molly comes to her and tells her she needs to come party with them. Tessa says no again, but Molly insists. And it seems this time it's happening. Tessa's first party in college. She tries many of her clothes. Hours later, both girls arrive at the house party. Tessa looks shy and uncomfortable in it. Time passes. Scott and his friends are having fun. Molly comes to them and introduces Tessa. She sees that another girl is all over Scott already. Tessa then drinks a lot of the bottle, impressing everyone. Steph then wants to play truth or dare. She then chooses dare, and they dare her to make out with Scott. Scott stands up, comes to her face and asks if she wants to do this. Tessa then says she is done playing this game. She leaves the room, which shocks everyone. Tess steps out and calls Noah. Noah reminds her they were supposed to FaceTime. Noah is mad at her, especially after realizing she has been drinking. He lectures her and she hangs up. She then goes back to the party. She wanders around and finds herself in a room upstairs. She checks the books. Scott appears behind her and asks what is she doing. She is asking if he is drunk. He tells her he doesn't drink just like her. He then quotes the book she is holding and asks her what is she doing in his room. She didn't know it was his room. He holds her arm as both get super close to each other. She is super attracted to Scott. Their lips are on the verge of touching when she stops all of a sudden. She tells him she can't, she needs to go and leaves in a hurry. She steps outside as Scott looks at her sitting from the roof. While she walks outside, Noah texts her he is disappointed in her. The next day, after the class, Scott tells her it was exciting. She stops him saying whatever you think happened between us didn't happen. She has a boyfriend, she repeats. He leaves and she complains to Landon, who reveals his mom is dating Scott's dad. She also learns that his dad is the chancellor of the school. That night Tessa is hanging out with Molly, who is getting a tattoo. Molly realizes Noah is the only dude she ever hung out with. Her mom made her meet Noah when he was only 5. The next day, Tessa is back at the cafeteria when she sees Scott seating. He comes to her and says, "We have friends in common, so we can't avoid each other." He wants to start over and maybe be friends. He then wants to show her a place. But Tessa still wants to keep her distance. He then leaves her. Before stepping out of that door, she hesitates, gives him one more look, then goes for the ride with him. They are driving far in the forest. The ride is silent as they both keep looking at each other. The car then stops in the middle of nowhere. Both get out as Scott tells her the place is this way. She follows him. He suggests them to go for a little swim. She is hesitant like always, but he doesn't care and jumps in the water. He insists on Tessa in joining him. After thinking it through, she decides to put his shirt and slowly gets in the water. Scott then asks for her boyfriend's name. She tells him how great he is. Scott finds Noah boring. It's now silent. They are both in the water, looking at each with such passion. They finally kiss in such passionately way. That same night, both go to eat at a dinner. Both get to know each other better. She wants to know how he ended up here, his story. Scott passes. He doesn't believe the past dictates who you are, but the present does. At this moment, the girl that was hanging out with Scott, Steph, finds them, accompanied by Zed. They sit at their table. Steph puts her hands around Scott and asks Tessa about her boyfriend. Scott then decides they are leaving. He has been rude to Steph, then asks Tessa to leave. He will join her later. Minutes later, she asks him if he was embarrassed that they saw them together. Tessa says she won't tell anyone about them. He is surprised and says there is nothing between us. Tessa is so confused. He tells her it was fun but he doesn't date. She understands, gets mad, slams the key and leaves. The next day, Noah surprised Tessa with some flowers. He wonders if she is okay. The night arrives and a party takes place around fire. Tessa brings Noah. He meets all her friends. Scott looks at them. Steph realizes it and goes to sit with Zed. Another friend starts flirting with Tess, which Noah tries to stop, but Scott gets angry and punches his friend, ending up fighting him. Later, Tessa and Noah watch some movies in her room. When he falls asleep, her new best friend Landon calls her. She then meets him in the middle of the night. His house is in shambles. His mother dates Scott's father. He believes he is the only one he will talk to. She then goes to Scott, who is sitting by the pool drinking. His father is getting remarried, he says. He then asks her to come with him. He apologizes on how he treated her. He admits being a mess. They both then kiss with passion as she falls asleep in his arms. The morning arrives and Tessa wakes up to 16 missed calls from Noah. She runs to her building where she finds Noah waiting for her. She tells him a friend needed her help. Noah then looks behind and Scott is there. Noah gets emotional. Tessa tries to explain herself. Noah can't believe this is happening and he starts leaving. She follows him saying she is sorry. Both Noah leaves in a hurry. She then comes back to her room, all in shock. She confesses to Molly, saying she feels like she just lost her best friend. Molly takes her in her arms and comforts her. Days pass and Tessa is ignoring her mom, who wants to talk to her, as well as Scott texts. One night, she decides to go pay a visit to Scott. She reveals to him that her dad left her when she was 10. Her mom then fell apart. She had to take care of her, but no one was there for her. She feels bad for what she did to Noah. The next day, while the library is closing, Noah takes Tessa aside. They stay in the library after it closes. He then reads her a book. Hours later, a guard catches them as they run away. Music is playing as both are having so much fun. Days pass and the new couple is having so much fun together. They feel like two stars who found each other. One morning, mom bursts in and see them. The mom is so disappointed in her daughter. The mom lectures her in the hallway. She wants Tessa to break up with Scott. The daughter finally breaks out and is tired to be the perfect girl. This is her life and she wants her mom to let her live it. The mom then tells her daughter you are cut off, and that Scott will break her heart. Landon is worried. He adds that Scott is complicated and to be careful. The next day, Scott picks up Tessa. He brings her to an apartment. He tells her this is the place of a friend of his father. He takes care of the plants in this apartment. He adds that imagine if this was their place. After her mom cut her off, he had to do something, and says that they can stay in this apartment for the rest of the year. Tessa is moved that he did this for her. Days, weeks pass as the new couple live happily in this apartment, creating memories. Scott's phone can't stop ringing. It's messages from Steph saying, "Meet us at Bone at 9, I miss you." Tessa confronts him about it and he doesn't understand those texts either. Tessa thinks he is hiding something. He gets mad and leaves. Tessa is then in her feelings. She even ignores Scott's texts. She decides to go out and meet Scott's friend, Jace. She wants to know where Scott is. She then goes to the bar. There Steph and friends are having out. Steph looks mad. Scott then arrives all shocked to see Tessa here. Both women confront Scott. Steph says something is going on but it's not what you think. Scott then tells her to shut up. Steph then shows Tessa the video of the night she rejected Scott. In the video Scott tells the camera he takes the dare of making her fall in love with him, then break up with her. Tessa is devastated as Steph says it was all a game. Scott tells her it was before he got to know her. She confronts him and he reassures her he is really in love with her now. She leaves him and goes back to her mom, giving her a big hug. She goes to see Noah, who is surprised she is back. She apologizes to him. She then goes back to college. She goes back to the lake they first went to. She read his personal journal and realized how deeply he loves her. The movie ends as Scott joins Tessa by that lake.